Hello and welcome to this Photoshop tutorial. In this tutorial I'm going to give you an introduction into using 3D text in Photoshop. So first things first, open up yourself a background image. When selecting, just be careful to choose in relation to space, because space is quite an important part for your 3D text, and lighting, so consider what type of lighting it is and what kind of direction the lighting is coming from. So a rather simplistic scene here to work with. And my size of my image is quite small, just to keep the processing speeds quite high in this tutorial. But please do choose good quality imagery when you're selecting. So I'd like to add some text. I have some text pre-prepared, so just using your type tool to insert your text and using your move tool to position. Once that's in place, if we use Control and click on our layer, the text layer, we can create a new 3D extrusion from that selected layer. That will bring up some of our 3D editing palettes here, and you will see if you look closely that there are different settings, and there are different kind of layers to the 3D effect. So we have light, we have cameras, we have objects, and the object is our text, and that's divided up into its different parts. So we have the front of the text, the side of the text, and the back of the text, so on and so forth. You'll find that while you're working, the quality of the text, the quality of the image is quite poor initially, and some of the effects you're applying might be quite difficult to see until you actually click on render down the bottom here. Rendering can take some time, but it's worth it to get the good quality end results. So if we take a look at the top of the layer palette here in the properties, we can see that this tool here with the T symbol is the mesh. When we use mesh, we want to play around with some of the settings in this part here. And we can also take control over the settings using the horizontal and vertical axis in the center of the image there as well. So one thing you can try is using extrusion depth, so we can see what kind of effect that has. Zooming forwards and zooming back. So I'm just going to bring mine forwards a little. There are also various shape presets that you can play with as well to affect the shape and roundness of your text and so on and so forth. Next thing we're going to try is using deform. So deform is the next one along here, whereas you can rotate, twist, bend, taper, and extrude amongst other things. So you can see that the settings can be changed in the palette here, but we can also change by hovering over certain parts of our picture or over our text. So we have twist, so we can twist our text one way and the next. Okay, so we have twist there, and then hovering down we have bend, so you can bend it one way and the next. Okay, you can actually bend all the way around, so you can see that kind of quite a striking effect taking place there. Then we have taper, so tapering forwards and tapering back. You can see the twisting as it comes in and moves out. And then extrude, which we've already played with. So some good settings that you can play with there. Then we have cap, and with cap you can change the bevel of your image. And we have some settings here as well which you can play with the beveling, so you'll be able to play around with these settings here. So we have angle and strength, so again you can play with those and tweak them around. This can be quite difficult to see the results until you have a texture added to your text, or we've begun to render. So you have to work very carefully with this setting. Then coordinates, it's the next one along, and coordinates nice and easy to use, but we have moving on the y-axis, so obviously moving up and down. We can see the shadow moving there as well. You have moving along the x-axis. Okay, and various other settings. So you can kind of move the text around with great control. So playing around with those, something that's quite useful as well is using move to ground. So it places the text back on the ground there. There are some other tools you can play with down the bottom left hand side here. We have orbit, so orbit the 3D camera. Okay, so we can see the changing position. You can actually look right behind the text as well. Then we have panning the camera, so left to right there. And also dolly the camera as well. Okay, so the dolly effects. There you go, so you can use those to control your text. Then we're going to have a little look at the 3D layering over here. So if we look at our layer, so we're looking at our object layer, which is the text, you can see it's all divided up. So if you take the front of the text, then if you go to diffuse, you can click on that and you can change the color of your text. So you can add color to it. And again, you'll need to render to see some of the effects taking place. But what we're going to be doing actually, I'm going to undo that one. So I'm going to undo the sort of material color. And we're going to add some texture to it. And the way to do that is to make sure we select all of our layers here. So I've got the top one selected, holding now Shift, clicking the bottom one, it's going to select all of them. So that's all of the sides of our text object. Then clicking this folder on the right hand side of diffuse, go to load texture, and I'm going to load up a grass texture. So that's going to add the grass texture to our object, and again the resolution is not great until we start rendering, but you can obviously render at this point if you want to, and to see how it's progressing. So we've got our texture loaded. I'm going to minimize our object layer here, and I'm going to go to the lighting effects now. So you can play around with your lighting in lots of different ways. One way is to control it from the tools in the center of the image here, just to kind of play around to see what kind of different effects it has by shifting the lighting source. You can play around with the shadow, and you can make it stronger or harder. So you can see it's quite soft now, but if you move it to the left hand side, it will make that shadow a little bit harder. So you can play around with that. And you've got the color of your light as well, and the type of your light here too. If you want to add more lighting, then you can click down the bottom here, click on the light source, and you can add more lighting effects to it. Alright, so there we go. So I'm going to click away from that now and just come back to our basic text layer. And I'm going to hit render, and it's going to take a moment, so I'm going to speed you guys through this, and I'll be back in a second when it's done. Okay, there we go, all done. The wonder of modern technology. That actually in real time took 4 minutes to render. So you need to be quite patient with the rendering, but it will smooth out a lot of those details and put it together a lot better. So there you go. Good luck with the technique. I hope it gives you a good taster and a good sort of introduction. There's a lot more kind of depth with 3D layering, and there's a lot greater control that you can work with. But this is a good starting point, so enjoy.